Hello gamers, today is August the 13th, 2025, and by the most extraordinary coincidence, it is indeed the 321st anniversary of the Battle of Blenheim. And by the most extraordinary coincidence, that is the game, and indeed the battle, that I've chosen to do next. And I'd probably better zoom out a bit. There we go. There we are, you see. Yes, Volley and Bayonet in 6mm this time. Right. And I'm doing it all using this slim volume. It's actually quite a thick volume. Volley and Bayonet, Road to Glory, Scenarios, Battles for the War of the Spanish Succession by Adrian, Powell and John S. Harding, which is a marvelous production and contains many scenarios. Big, thick thing it is. Look at that. Look at all that stuff you get. And in here you've got, well, I've made some notes evidently, but good Lord, I mean, what have you got? Shouldn't really do this on camera, should I? Should have been prepared for this, so I'm making it up as I go along. Hang on. No fewer than 19 scenarios, many of which are very modestly sized. In fact, I think the one theme is running through the whole thing is that the scenarios do not use enormous tables, so hopefully will be able to be played by lots of different folks. Yes, so that's the source material that we're using for this one. And then we'll move over to, we'll just glide seamlessly over here to, what have we got? There we go. Here we have the Confederate force. Oh, God. Yep, small technical hiccup there. Small technical hiccup. Okay, here we go. Here we've got the Confederate forces. We're in 6mm this time. Using my collection of... are they entirely? Yes, they are entirely irregular miniatures figures. And most of them have been painted by others. About half of them have been painted by me. And anyway, so we've not got exactly accurate figures for every particular force and so forth and so on. But generally speaking, they're more or less the right look, more or less the right color uniforms, that sort of thing. They haven't been assembled and painted specifically for this battle by any means, and a lot of the one good thing is that I've got the flags, which I'll show you in a bit more detail in a minute. There are lots and lots of paper flags that I got from Tiny Tin Troops, and they are splendid, and they've worked out very nicely. So here we've got the Confederate forces, and when I say Confederate, I don't mean those forces under the command of General Beauregard or anything like that. No, I mean those under the command of His Grace the Duke of Marlborough, and also His Highness Prince Eugene. So we've got, well, you know, you got British, you've got Danish, Dutch, Württemberg, Hanover, Hesse. Let's see, apologies if I miss anyone in here. Prussians, excuse me, yes, definitely lots of Prussians. I think that's mainly it for the different nationalities. Okay. That's right. There are some chaps that are, where are they? Oh, that's right. The Austrians here, some Austrian cuirassiers with their lobster helmets and all that sort of thing. Okay, and then we move on seamlessly to the Franco-Bavarian forces. So there we've got the French and then the Bavarian forces of the Elector, and headed up, of course, by Tallard. There's old Tallard there, and there's Massin. You see? Yes. And again, you know, approximately the right uniforms and approximately the right figures and so forth and so on. And I wanted to give you a look at some of those rather splendid Tiny Tin Troops flags. So I'm not sure if this is going to work if I zoom in. Yeah, you got a pretty good look there. I'm not sure if I go in too close if it's going to work very well. Let's come back a little bit here. There we go. It's still not working very well. Okay, we'll go like that. So yeah, Tiny Tin Troops paper flags. Some of them are metal flags that are painted on. Those ones you're looking at right now, for example, are paper. And yes, it worked out very well. A complete bewildering just mishmash of flags as far as being able to identify the nationalities from the flags. You can pretty well forget it as far as I'm concerned. There's one flag, just out of a little bit, just a little side note here, and that is the what were they called? The wild geese. Yes, the Irish who were fighting for the French. So we've got Claire, belonging to De Roselle, I imagine it is. Apologies for pronunciation of all the different ones. Okay, but anyway, got these chaps. Zoom out. I can't see what I'm doing. These chaps here, and that flag I actually, well, I sort of modified Tiny Troops flag there, so I wanted to have approximately the right flag there for the wild geese. Okay, yes, marvelous. So those are the forces, and there we see upside down with north at the top, Blenheim. So let's go around the other side. And there we have Blenheim itself, or rather the battlefield of Blenheim, I should say, excuse me. And I'll get my trusty pipe for a pointer. Okay, so north at the top, more or less. And we can see that we've got, we'll come to the conurbations in a moment. Here's the Danube. Okay, now this is copied faithfully from the map in the scenario book. So there's the Danube, which is an impassable obstacle. So it actually means that in this battle, this area here is not going to be occupied by anyone. Then we've got lots of small streams that are definitely consequential obstacles. So we've got here, we've got the, what is it, the Nebelbach. Probably need to get the map out to help myself here. Just a second. Which is the particularly important one because basically the battle starts up with the Confederates on this side, north of the Nebelbach, and the Franco-Bavarians, of course, down here on the southern side of the Nebelbach. Considerable marshy area here, as we can see. And then we've got this stream here, which is the Maulmeyer, okay? And then down here we have the Brunnerbach, okay? This one down here doesn't have a name on the map, okay? That's it for the water courses. Then, of course, here we have the small town of Blenheim, which somebody decided to call Blenheim inaccurately, but it is indeed Blenheim. Then we have Unterglau there, and Oberglau here. We've got Schwennenbach up here, Lutzingen here, and then down here we have Höchstädt, and the names given to that town and that town on the map in the scenario book need small adjustments, but that's what they are, okay. And then in terms of, we've got a very large, thick, sort of what V&B calls a forest here, which is called the Goldberg, apparently. Then what else have we got? We've got a marshy area here, that little patch there. We've got a significant marshy area all along there. Marshy over there, you can't go there because the river's impassable. Marshy here, as we can see, bit of marshy stuff down there. And then and as you can imagine, these are the roads. Okay, hopefully that doesn't require too much interpretation or explanation. Right, then the challenge I had was to represent the different elevations, and I tried a lot of different methods, and I didn't want to have to sort of hand build terrain. I wanted to get the thing onto the. It was enough work to do this, believe me. So what I did was I decided to use a system which will not mean anything presumably to the observer right now, but it means something to me, and I'm going to stick with it. Which is to say, I don't like to have ugliness on the map, so hopefully the map isn't too ugly. And what I've done is I've used these, whereas I'm using these little tufty type things to show the marshes, these bigger ones like this, which are placed at rather regular intervals, they actually represent contour lines. So we've got a low contour here, as we might imagine, down by the river. And then, so if you go, for example, from here to there, you're going uphill. So here's the contour line running along here, like that, and up to here, okay, where actually there's this significant drop down to the river. And then we've got another contour line, which starts over here, runs along here, like that, and then it's going to run along there, like that, with, as we might imagine, the stream down the bottom. We've also got, of course, this stream here, which is actually, because this here, as I've just explained, this is on a higher elevation. So you'd have high elevation, then you go downhill there to low elevation, then you go uphill here to higher elevation again. As one might imagine, I'm no geographer, but as one might imagine, because this is on a higher elevation, that might explain why it's not marshy anywhere, you see? Yes. It's a theory, anyway. That pretty well explains the battlefield as I've represented it. And, of course, because we're doing it, well, I'm using 6mm forces. That's right, I need to explain that. I'm using 6mm forces. What sort of V and B scale am I using? Well, I'm using the centimetre scale, which is to say inches in Volley and Bayonet have been, in the Volley and Bayonet rulebook as published, have been replaced here with centimetres. This is a scale I've used before. Was it the Battle of Maulweyer, which is elsewhere on this YouTube channel, which was the first Volley and Bayonet battle I played after having not played it in decades. And that was a very small battle that was played. But as we can see with this, we can get Blenheim into a small space. You can certainly get this onto your average dining table without any problem whatsoever. I suppose, just looking at it ballpark here, it's about 3 feet on the side there, and it's about 2 feet on the side there. And I'll put my hand down there by the Danube so we can see, we are talking small here. And so that means that in the units that are over there, you've got 18th century linear type units for the infantry. And those would normally, of course, in Volley and Bayonet have a frontage of 3 inches, but here they've got a frontage of 3 centimetres, 30mm. The same goes for the massed cavalry. They have the same frontage, but they have twice the depth. Then, of course, half that frontage for the artillery. You can see the artillery down there. And the same sort of thing going over here. So it does mean that you can definitely, if you use the centimetre scale, you can certainly get things done on a relatively inexpensive budget, and also it's going to take a lot less time to paint the figures and that sort of thing. And you can do big battles. I've done Waterloo this way, did Waterloo back in about, good Lord, 1996 or something like that, and also Gettysburg. Okay. So I wanted to show all that introductory stuff actually on the 13th of August today, which is the actual anniversary of the battlefield. not going to start playing just now because very shortly it's off to bed because going on a short trip tomorrow. But then when I come back, get straight into it, and I'm very, very interested to see how it's going to feel. I've recently played Napoleonics, of course, which you can see elsewhere on the channel. And then the last battle I played previously was going to a different direction in history, was the American Civil War, Champion Hill. So you had particularly long-range musket fire in that, for example, which changed the dynamics of the battle, particularly long-range rifled cannon, that sort of thing. And then here we're going backwards in time, of course, from the Napoleonic period. We're going back basically 100 years. And so now we're going to have a great number of infantry is poorly trained, which means that they will not get a free facing change during their movement. That means their movement is going to be a lot more rigid than it would be in the Napoleonic period. And then we've also got, what is it called? Poor musketry. I think they call it early fire drill, something like that in the scenario book. Poor musketry, so that means that the units are going to inflict, they're going to inflict less damage when they shoot. Then you've also got the lots of interesting things. You've got the business of the different cavalry tactics, which are that do they charge, like the British tended to charge in with a saber, and then a lot of the enemy tended to stand off and fire their pistols, that sort of thing. You've got artillery, some of which has non-professional either drivers or crews, I can't remember, or both, and that limits their ability to, I think, as I remember, it limits their ability to change facing and that sort of thing. So it will be a very different feel for the battlefield. And I'm very much looking forward to getting a taste of that, because I've done, as I said, with Maulwitz, and I've done the American War of Independence, so I've done 17th century battles before, but not this far back, not as far back as the War of the Spanish Succession. So very much looking forward to it. And right, well, off we go shortly. Now then, here we are. The forces have been deployed. Looks rather different now, doesn't it? Yes. Before I go on too far, straight away I did want to mention a couple of mistakes I just made in what I just said, which was actually filmed several days ago. Not that that's terribly important, come to think of it. But I said played blah, blah, blah in the 17th century. Of course, I meant to say the 18th century. And also I said something about pre-professional artillery having a problem with changing facing. It's not that at all. The difference with pre-professional artillery is that once they unlimber, they cannot re-limber. Right, so you'd better pick a good place to sight them, because that's your lot. Right, anyway, moving on. So here we are. We've deployed, and in this scenario, the French deployed first. So if we get the old, I'm not sure the pipe is going to make it this time. I think we're going to have to use the stick. Right. So here we go. Right. So the French, yes, as we can imagine. So north is at the top. Here's north, and sorry, north's up there. Sorry, I'm not sure you even saw that. Right, and we've got the French arrayed from all the way from Lutzingen all the way over to the east for Blenheim itself, and they're all south of the key stream that's running along here, the Nebelbach, which is a marshy stream in two sectors. There's marsh there, and there's also a very big section of marsh here, of course. The difference is, in this scenario, there's a special scenario rule for the Nebelbach, because the I'm actually going to call them either the Anglo Allies or the Anglo. I'm not going to call them. Yeah, I'll call them the Anglo Allies. I think it's reasonable to have Anglo at the beginning of that, because it was under the command of Marlborough. So yeah, I don't like calling them the Confederates. It confuses the heck out of me. So, yeah, so obviously we've got lots and lots of different nations. We've covered that. But anyway, they had they looked for places to pass through it, causeways. They had fascines and all this sort of thing, and so places they were able to cross the stream as if it were not suffering largely from the marshy factor. So in the scenario special rules, you roll a die, and when you cross the stream, I suppose, and if you roll, I believe it's if you roll a one or no, what is it? Normally you would be disordered in crossing a marshy bank stream, but if you roll, I think it's a 1 or a 2, I think, there's no disorder. You get lucky. So something along those lines, right? Which adds a bit of excitement to the whole thing, you know. Die rolling always does. Yeah, so the French deployed first, and but there were the entire map, of course, was squared off into sectors, and there were some, you know, the commanders absolutely could not just deploy where they wanted to. Their deployment zones were quite specific. So, but looking at the big picture, if I draw a line here using the old stick like that, basically to the left or to the west of the stick is under the command of Marsin, and to the right of the stick, to the east, is under the command of Tala. Okay. And let's see. Of course, over here with Marsin, you've got the Bavarian forces are over there, which are historically would be commanded by the Elector, Maximilian. He doesn't actually have a figure in this, and not in the scenario. Not in this scenario. There are Bavarian forces, certainly, but he's not represented as such. So there we go. Then, as I said, so that's that lot over there, and then this lot over here, as I said, is Tala. We can see that the French have not chosen to occupy Blenheim, which might seem very odd, and we'll see how good of an idea that was in the fullness of time. They have decided to deploy, they were allowed to deploy further forward than that, so they've deployed, the key thing is that they've deployed up here next to the Nebelbach, right next to the Nebelbach, so that means that if the Anglo-Allies were to attack them across here, they would count as coming into contact with an enemy immediately on the other side of a stream, which means that they would be disordered. And they don't want to do that. So the French are trying to sort of get out there to the front and stop them as soon as possible in that particular instance. Right, what else have we got? I don't know if I did mention, I just do want to be specific, that Blenheim and Höchstädt and Lutzingen are indeed towns, and they're stone towns, okay? And then we have the other three conurbations, which is, Schwennenbach and Oberglau and Unterglau, they're villages. Okay. Let's see, what else have we got? So they deployed first, that's right. And then the Anglo-Allies deployed, and they will take the first turn. The Anglo-Allies will. So they could have deployed, some of them could have deployed slightly further south. Not very much. They didn't want to be deploying in a marsh. We can imagine that there are reasons for that. As we can see, things are fairly congested. You know, there are several areas where the troops are several lines deep. This is a set piece battle. It very much unlike, for example, the two recent Napoleonic battles that I played, which was Preußig Eylau and also Brienne, and then the other one was from the ACW, which was Champion Hill. In all of those battles, there was a great deal of freewheeling movement going on. But here, you've basically got wall-to-wall soldiers, as it were, between the Danube and the Goldberg Forest over there. Over there. Remember, the Danube is impassable, so nothing is going to happen here. There are no reinforcements. There are no night rules. There's no obstructive weather. There's no rain or snow, that sort of thing. So at least we've got a spot of decent weather. So, if you've got a clear view in front of you, you can move the full move and all that sort of thing, and the command radius is not restricted in any way. Okay. Big factor, of course, that we have here today is, we are in the 18th century, so we've got things that are, they're less well-trained, more clunky, as it were, than we're used to with Napoleonic and certainly American Civil War. And I've actually made some notes on the different forces, so let's have a look at those. Right, so I always like to know, thinking about strengths and weaknesses, and I need to know, before the battle commences, if one particular army might have, the only example of a certain troop type, or they might have no troop type, that sort of thing, and that might make them particularly vulnerable. So let's have a look. Well, in summary, the Anglo-Allies have got 28 infantry units. They've got 16 cavalry units, and they've got 5 units of artillery. By comparison, the French Bavarians have 26 infantry, which is only 2 less, is about the same. They've got 12 units of cavalry, which is actually 4 less units. They've got 8 units of artillery, which is 3 more. And, of course, the strengths vary, the type of artillery and all that sort of thing. And they have 1 unit of cavalry skirmishers. Right, so in terms of pluses and minuses, let's see. We'll look at the what they call in the book, the scenario book, the Anglo-Dutch. So, of course, it has a very large Danish contingent. It's also got Prussians, Hessians, Hanoverians, and so forth and so on. So we'll do them first, then we'll do the Imperial forces under Eugene, and then we'll do finally the French-Bavarian forces. Right, the Anglo-Dutch lot then. Let's see, all the infantry is poorly trained with one exception. So poorly trained means that they don't get that free facing change which we're used to in Volley and Bayonet. So that means that instead of a very common maneuver, for example, would be at the start of your move, you might change facing, point in a different direction, in other words, and off you go. Well, now to change facing is going to cost you half your move. So it means that things are going to be moving slowly unless you're already pointed in the right direction. None of their cavalry is firearm trained, so they're trained to charge with the enemy and engage with the saber, which basically means that, as far as I can see, they're simply going to have an advantage over the French cavalry, all of which is firearm trained. They count as heavier cavalry when in combat. Is that right? Yeah, I think the firearm trained cavalry automatically count as inferior weight. That's right, when they're in combat. Okay, then so the cavalry should be very potent. Non-Prussian Germans are early fire drill. Right, so there are some non-Prussian Germans. There are Hessians and there are Hanoverians. And their early fire drill, well, that's a term they're using in the scenario book. But in the rules, it's called poor musketry. So that means that they simply, in firing and in melee, they're going to have a slightly lower result than normal. They're going to be at a disadvantage to sort of troops that don't have that. So watch out for that with the non-Prussian Germans. And a minority of infantry do, in fact, have dedicated guns. So there are some, but they are in the minority. Then we have the Imperial forces, which are, of course, over here under Eugene. Most of the infantry have dedicated guns. That's nice. None of the infantry are poorly trained, so they should be able to zip around without worrying too much about that facing change. Okay, so they're very polished, as it were. All of the cavalry are firearm trained, so no, they're not like this shiny, powerful, saber-wielding forces under Churchill, Marlborough's brother. They are instead old-fashioned firearm trained, and all have a morale of 5 or better, with one exception. So they all have rather a good opinion of themselves. And this is significant because we'll get to it in a minute, but that is not at all the case with the French units. Okay, which brings us nicely coming into the French and Bavarian forces. So there you've got, down here is pretty well French. Then as you come down here, we get into French and Bavarians, and we can see where we got some Bavarians there, for example. Yes, with their rather natty-looking flags there. Yes, marvelous flags. Love the flags. Anyway, let's see. They have got. It's noteworthy that they've got 6 4-strength point units, which in this sort of a setup is a pretty beefy unit, because most of the units are 3 strength points. There are some which are 2 infantry units I'm talking about now, but so they've got some pretty big units. They have no dedicated guns, so we don't have to worry about that, or rather the the Allies don't have to worry about the French having dedicated guns, and the French have to worry about the fact that they don't have dedicated guns, obviously. All of their infantry are poorly trained, so that means that they all have to pay for their facing changes. We've already explored that at great length. All of their cavalry are firearm trained, so again, that means disadvantage when they're facing the cavalry that are basically under the command of the man I'll call Churchill as opposed to Maulweyer. Of course, Marlborough was a Churchill, but we're talking about Churchill, his brother, whose name escapes me. I'll look it up. Okay. So he's commanding the Allied left wing, and Eugene commands the right, as we know. Let's see. So the French, all of their cavalry are firearm trained, so they better watch out when they're dealing with Allied cavalry on the Allied left. 13 of their units have a morale of 4, the French Bavarians. So that means that's half their army. Now, that is a significant factor, because generally speaking, other than that, you've got troops with a morale of 5. You've got a fair number of instances of troops with a morale of 6 as well. So, overall then, you've got half the French army has got what we might call below par morale, which will, of course, make them more likely to fail a morale test. Right. And then all of the infantry are early fire drill, so that means that they're poor musketry, as it's called in the core rules. Okay. Those are some noteworthy statistics. Right. So, what's the plan? Well, as we said, the Allies are going to make the first move. And the funny thing about the scenario book is it says that the battle is 10 turns. Oh, that's right. We've got to come to the battle length and let's get that sorted out. Battle length and the victory conditions. Right. Battle is 10 turns long. And I was about to say, the funny thing is that, unless I missed something, which I don't think I did, in the scenario book, we've got the battle is 10 turns long, but it doesn't say what time of day it starts at, so we don't know what time of day is being represented by each turn. Now, in the actual battle, famously, this is well recorded, that Marlborough was sitting there thinking, where's Eugene? Where's Eugene? He should be here by now. And Eugene sent a message to Marlborough saying that he would be on the field, or, sort of ready to go, or something like that, at 12:30. And I think the battle was pretty well over by about 8 o'clock, if memory serves. So that would mean, but the battle started before then. That's right, because Marlborough's troops, I think, were. No, I'm not sure they did. Yeah. Anyway. But so we might imagine if the battle ended at about 8 o'clock, we might imagine that the battle is sort of starting at about 10 o'clock, roughly. I'm getting confused now, because what does that mean? Does that mean somehow magically the battle's starting earlier than it did in reality? Or does it mean it's allowing us to go on fighting until 10 o'clock at night if we start the battle theoretically at 12 o'clock? I don't know, but you get the general idea. So it's starting roughly at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, that sort of thing. And it's 10 turns long. Right, so what are the victory conditions? Well, the victory conditions for the Allies are very, very simple. They are to exhaust all of Talar. First, in advance, of course, I will apologise for the mispronunciation of all words that come out of my mouth. Right, exhaust all of Talar's army or all of Marcin's army. There you go. So, the Allied commander has looked at this, that is to say, His Grace, the Duke of Marlborough, has looked at this and decided that he is going to pound away on Talar. So remember, there's that dividing line right there. So everybody to the right of that. He's going to make that his objective, is to exhaust Talar, as opposed to trying to exhaust Marcin and the Elector, who are this way. So, as in the real battle, the job of Eugene over here, where is Eugene himself? Where is he actually represented? He's over there somewhere, isn't he? Yes, there he is. There's a chap. Is to occupy Marcin and the Bavarians, Marcin and the Elector over here, keep them occupied so that they can't send reinforcements over here to Talar. Keep them occupied, and then Marlborough is going to try to systematically get over the Nebelbach and get stuck into Talar. One thing here, of course, is that there are no special scenario rules in the scenario as designed in the book here to cause Blenheim to be occupied. There are no scenario rules that cause, once troops are in there, that they won't be let go. There's nothing to sort of suck the reserves into there, all of which, of course, happened in the real battle and were crucial in the way that the real battle unfolded. So this is actually very much more... the commanders have very much more freedom to sort of do what they want. Now that may mean, I mean, if things are very finely balanced here, that might mean that the French have too much flexibility, and it might become very, very difficult for the Allies to beat them, because in reality they overstuffed Blenheim, and they would not let the troops go, even though they were being pounded here in the centre and they needed reinforcements from here. But the commander over here, forget his name, would not let the troops out, and there were so many troops in Blenheim that they couldn't actually even discharge their weapons because they were packed in so tightly, redundantly full of units, and all the reserves were put in there, and even, dismounted dragoons who were guarding this gap here between Blenheim and the Danube. They were sucked into it as well. Everybody was thrown in there, and to no particularly good use. Well, I mean, it was well defended, but they had too many troops in there. Anyway, and there's nothing like that. Now, I know there's a chap right now, for example, on the, on the Volley and Bayonet Facebook site, speaking now in August of 2025, who's doing a splendid job to put together a Blenheim scenario, and in that he's building in particular rules that will control who can come and go from Blenheim. Looks very interesting. I wanted to try a scenario straight from the new book, so that this is what I've gone with, and I think that chap is still building his Blenheim scenario as he does it. And of course, by definition, that would tend to mean that it's never been play tested. So I'm taking the one from the book. So we'll see what happens. Right, so the victory conditions, that's what the Anglo-Allies have decided to do. They're going to pound Talar and try to exhaust his... what is it? They have to exhaust every division in his army. How many divisions are there? Let's have a quick look. Okay, this should be... Get this on my old notes here. So we've got... what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5 divisions. Right. So, we shall see. Then, as far as the French go, French victory conditions, let's have a look. Right. The French can win in one of two ways. They can either win by in the description it says holding, presumably on turn 10, meaning being in possession of at the end of turn 10, I suppose you would adjudicate it. Unterglau, Oberglau, and Blenheim. Right, so we've got Oberglau, which is here, right, which they're in, as we can see. But then we have Unterglau here, so they would have to take Unterglau, of course, at some point, and they'd have to hold it. I'm adjudicating. They'd have to be holding on to it at the end of turn 10, the last turn of the battle, and also Blenheim. Right, that's one way they could do it. Or the other way is to exhaust 10 divisions, 10 enemy divisions, wherein a collapsed division, not merely exhausted, but collapsed, morale collapsed, would count as double. So that means that the French can win by producing a substantial amount of damage on the enemy, or by holding on to what they already have, holding on to that one, and taking and holding that one. Right. So as we can imagine, it's going to be difficult for them to take and hold that one with this lot here. So, but there we go. I think that the French commander is going to be... Because I suppose if the French commander digs in his heels and says, no, I'm not going to try and do that, let's see you come at me and fail, that would mean that we could be on course for a draw, I suppose, because... I mean, obviously, it's entirely possible that neither commander will achieve their victory conditions, in which case there would be a draw. There's nothing in the scenario that says anything about a draw, but I suppose that's what we would adjudicate. Right. Right, now another thing that occurs to me about this particular battle, and I suppose it's probably generally the case with this period of warfare using Volley and Bayonet, is that in stark contrast, for example, to the American Civil War, which is the last battle I played, but then also in contrast, I would think, to the Napoleonic period, there are lots of details that need to be borne in mind about the different units in play. And one is going to have to be very careful to note the differences between the units when they get moved about, and when they test morale, and when they go into combat, and that sort of thing, which is why I tried to cram as much information as possible onto the unit labels that I've produced. And so what I mean by this is for example, you've got infantry. Let's imagine you've got infantry that's either in combat with, is either shooting at or in melee with enemy infantry. Okay, so you've got infantry, as is the case with, I think, all of the French and Bavarians, as we've said. They have the early fire drill, which means it's poor musketry, is what it's called in the rules, early fire drill in the book. That means they're at a disadvantage to use units that don't have that. So you've got to be careful that you know which ones that you note, as it were. You take notice of which ones have that, which ones don't have that, when they're in combat with one another. Okay, you've got poorly trained units. I think it would certainly be the case to say that, yes, the majority of units in this battle are poorly trained, which means they have no free facing change. But of course, it would be very easy to miss that, And because, of course, there are some units, the more sort of professionally trained units, as it were, Prussians, for example, which are not poorly trained, so they do get the free facing change. So there's those two there. You've got cavalry. Are they do they use firearm tactics, or do they not? You've got the artillery. Is it pre-professional artillery, or is it not? What else do we have that sort of falls into these categories? Well, you've always got the factor of are they shock troops or are they not? And there are only a few shock troops, but I have marked that all the same. But we're used to that with Napoleonics. But we're not too used to some of those other things that I've just mentioned. So I'm going to have to be careful, and I'm sure there's going to be great scope for me to make mistakes in missing these little details when playing the battle. Okay, well, you're probably thinking, enough, to arms. You know, let's light the touch paper. Let's get the ram to touch the wall. Yes, let's get on with it. In other words, okay. So let's have the Anglo-Allies. They take the first turn, and let's see. We can already say that they start out with everyone in command. The Anglo-Allied commander, let's say that would be Marlborough, obviously. Well, is he the overall commander? I mean, does he actually command Eugene? I think nominally he does. Yes, I'm pretty sure he does. Yes. Okay, but of course, in Volley and Bayonet terms, he doesn't really. They're both army commanders. Yes, and what else did I find out? Oh, that's right. Yes, sorry, I found out. I know this is very conversational, but hey, what are you going to do? That old Churchill over here. No, that's not Churchill. There's Churchill, the Corps commander, is Charles Churchill, who is John Churchill, that is to say, His Grace the Duke's younger, I think he's younger, brother. And then we also had a name that was missing. Was it? Yeah, that's right. Over here, we have the forces of Clerambault, his division, and it was his chaps that were in Blenheim, Blenheim, and it was he who was causing the problem with jamming everybody possible into Blenheim and also refusing to let them go when requested by no less a figure than, where is he? Tala himself. So, Clerambault was over there. Right. Okay, so, yeah, all in command. So that means first turn, they're in command, no problems there. So let's go ahead and get on with the Allied movement. Very well, very well. The battle begins. The ball has begun. The ram has touched the wall. Yeah. Okay, so it's here we are on the 13th of August, 1704, in the region of the town of Blenheim. There you see. And although, of course, some nations today refer to this, I think at least partially, as the Battle of Höchstädt. Remember, Höchstädt is down here. All right. So what's happened? Well, we've just had the Anglo-Allied movement, and we've stopped because now it's time to look at morale tests and then get into combat. There's no melees taking place, so there will be morale tests if anyone finds themselves within the close range of the enemy's, basically artillery. And we are going to have some instances of that, surely, because we've got this French artillery here under Dubourg, and that's aimed across there at the forces of Scholten, which have moved forward. Eugene's in Eugene's army. Scholten has moved forward here up to the, as we can see, up to the Nebelbach. These chaps have crossed the Nebelbach. These chaps have moved up to the Nebelbach to have a pot. They're within musket range of these chaps here. We've got, I should mention, we've got the introduction, of course, of rather a lot of stationary markers. I think they look pretty good in this scale. So we've got the stationary markers there, as we can see in front of these French units, going all along here, Bavarians down here. And not too many on the Anglo-Allied side, because most of their forces have been in motion. So yes, these chaps have moved forward to try and get engaged here. The problem is there is a lot of marshy ground around. So there's a sort of dry bit here, and there's a sort of dry bit here. But the rest of it is all this dratted marsh that has to be negotiated. There is a special scenario rule that says when crossing the Nebelbach, which of course is this watercourse here, running along here, when crossing there, because Marlborough used phase scenes and was able to sort of find little causeways or whatever, it's only if you roll it's only if you roll a 1 or a 2 when you're crossing it that it counts as a marshy stream and disorders you. Otherwise it doesn't disorder you. Now you've got the problem too then, though, of course, is that as soon as you move into a marsh, there's a possibility if you roll a 5 or a 6 that you will become disordered. And that's what happened to these 2 units here. They had to hit a particularly squishy bit of the marsh, and so they're disordered. Other interesting movement up here, we had the cavalry, some of Eugene's cavalry under de la Tour has withdrawn into the Goldberg, into the forest there, so as to be out of range of the heavy guns here of the French under, or rather belonging to Maffei. All right. Yes, so there's been sort of baby steps forward. It hasn't been... I always look at it from the point of view of we've got to get cracking, okay, unless we're waiting for something else to happen. Well, the thing is, they're not waiting for any reinforcements, so if they delay their attack, what on earth are they delaying it for? It's just a question of there's a great deal of congestion in the areas where there's not too much marsh. There's just a stream to be crossed, but not a marshy stream to be crossed, and not a marsh to be waded through after you've crossed the marshy stream. So yes, it's very heavy underfoot. Yes, and here, of course, we've actually got 2 marshy streams to cross. So they're hoping, fingers crossed, that something significant might happen with Colonel Blood's artillery down here. It should be borne in mind, of course, that it is not pre-professional artillery, so they can scamper about just like where artillery used to scampering about in the Napoleonic and American Civil War periods, for example, so they can certainly do that. The other artillery, which is pre-professional, is just parked where it is, and that's your lot. No moving. Oh, sorry, except for the French light artillery, of which there is a fair amount. We've got Dubeux here, and sorry about the pronunciations. We have here we go, de Rogel there, Saint-Pierre here, Saint-Pierre there, and they are light, and they... Oh, it's not because they're light, it's because they don't happen to be professional artillery. Even just noticing here, right, so there's a fair amount of it on the French side. Clermont field unit there, field artillery, and they're not pre-professional, so they can move around. But anyway, so the idea of lining up that lot over there and having them stationary from the get-go is that they can pound away. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you know, they are, even though they're stationary, that means they've got 2 dice each. Okay, so that means that if all of them fire, you're rolling 6 dice. But you're looking for 6s. They're not at short range. You're looking for 6s. So I might make I haven't rolled any dice yet. I might make an amendment to that, because I might, come to think of it, move them forward. Because, of course, if they're in short range, they hit on a 4, 5, 6. Because right now they're just plinking away. They would have a 1 in 6 chance of scoring 1 hit on an infantry unit. If they fired at the artillery, they would have a 1 in 12 chance with the saving throws of scoring a hit on the beggars. So yes, so I'll rethink that. I think that I might do that there as the His Grace the Duke commanding. And then it's going to be getting into the combat. What I'm not going to do for this battle, because it's a much smaller scale, things are a lot tighter fit and all that sort of thing, I'm not going to be putting great big stacks of dice all over the place when I can compute who gets how many dice, and I'm not going to roll the dice individually. That will mean, of course, that the whole thing will take much shorter time to film and for you, my dear viewer, to watch. It'll take away a little bit of the excitement. You'll just get an update at each turn of sort of, well, this is what happened. Well, you know, you pays your money and you makes your choice. Or in this case, you don't pay any money. This is the way I did it, I believe, when I was doing, what was it, when I did Molwitz on this channel, and also when I did Quatre Bras on this channel twice. I'm pretty sure I didn't show any of the die rolls there. So, right. Right, so I will decide what to do about that, and then I'll do the morale tests. Okay, well, the game's off and running, and we've done the morale tests, and everybody passed the morale test. There was a morale test here on these chaps here belonging to Scholten. Close range of Dubourg's artillery there. Nothing happened. Everybody was fine. And then we had... oh, gosh. That's right. We had a test on these chaps here belonging to de Rogel. It's... what is it? Diesenheim. There we go. They were fine, and they just scraped through. They've got a morale of 4, and they only scraped through. And then these two here, yes, that's right. Colonel Blood did decide that he wanted his guns not stationary. He wanted them further forward, and they're within the close range now of the enemy. Or they have the enemy in their close range, so the enemy had to test, and they passed. So morale tests done. Thank you very much. All right, well, we've finished our combat, and for turn 1 for the turn 1 of the Anglo-Allies, right, and as we can see, we've got the hits marked, and it all went the way of the Allies. They managed to score 5 hits, not too bad, 5 hits on the enemy, and for a loss of none to themselves. So we've got 2 hits here down on the end. These chaps here, these are Prussians, you know, rather good with the old musketry. And who have we got down here? We got the Dutch down here, scored a hit there. And I think we had the artillery coming down here. That's right. The army heavy artillery got stuck into Diesenheim and scored a hit on him. And then down here, Colonel Blood, with his 3 units down here, managed to score 1 hit on Clérambault. What is that? D'Angelo, I think. Yes, so there we go. And now, of course, they're going to have to brace themselves because the French are now going to fire back. There were many instances, of course, where you had French artillery was in range but couldn't fire because it's the enemy's turn, and you can only fire if you're in close range in the enemy's turn. And there was also a tactical situation here, a little bit of tactical finesse, where these chaps put themselves forward, the Prussians, and they could have opened fire onto the enemy here, but and they're certainly within the range of these 2 units here, who could have fired back. But, of course, the so-called defensive fire, or what was it called? Counter-attacking, as it were, in Volley and Bayonet. Unless you're within close range of the enemy, you can only fire back if you were fired upon. So they chose, because it would have been a lousy deal, they chose not to fire on either one of those 2, and that meant that neither one of those 2 could fire at them. So there we go. They thought, we'll wait until we get more troops forward next turn before we fire up the old muskets and get stuck in. Right. So that's that done. There's no chance of any kind of exhaustion, as you can imagine, on the first turn. Well, I suppose that could have been, but you had a really small unit and a really small division. But we don't have to worry about that. So we will be pressing straight on to the French first turn. All right, and here we are. It's the end of movement in the French first turn. And let's see, we haven't seen a great deal of movement. Essentially what's happened is the cavalry, which were sort of bunched up in bad situations in a few places, because they were told specific places that they had to deploy at, and so they've sorted themselves out into a rather more reasonable arrangement now. And they've also specifically positioned themselves so that they are not within the first half of any retreat move that the infantry in front of them will make, so they don't get disordered by the infantry retreating into them. There are some exceptions. This unit here and this unit here stayed where they are because they're on the far side of the stream and they don't want to have to cross it again. The what is that? The Maulmeyer, this stream here. Okay. And everybody else has sort of sorted themselves out, so they're keeping back. They're beyond 400 yards, so that means that if the chaps have to retreat, they will not disorder the cavalry behind them. They won't mess that up. And let's see, in terms of, I don't think there was any infantry movement whatsoever. No, the infantry is taking stock of its position and remaining stationary, because they think that that's probably the best thing to do, generally speaking, all along the line. Yes, there's going to be some hard pounding. Obviously, clearly they're going to get pounded over here, and they're going to get pounded over here. And of course now, because these are in close range here, that means that they are going to be able to fire in the French turn. They're not stationary yet, but they are going to be able to fire. One thing that was looked at was in some detail was by the French commanders were the 2 units of pre-professional artillery which are still limbered. So these chaps over here belonging to Dissofri, and then we have these chaps here, yes, belonging to their army troops belonging to Massin. And it was decided that, sorry, there was one thing, I'll do that right now, yeah. They want to get them on the other side of the stream, so they're officially on the other side of the stream. So they move to there, we'll say. And yeah, but for the moment, there's no gap in the front line in which they could be deployed, so we'd have to remove somebody from the front line and put them into it. Being as they're pre-professional, they cannot deploy within close range of the enemy's artillery or within the range of the enemy's muskets. At least that's specified in this in the Battles of the War of the Spanish Succession book. This guy over here, yes. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's actually specified in the rules anywhere, even in the amendments to the rules, or the errata of the official Volley and Bayonet rules. That bit about not being able to deploy close to the enemy, we'll summarize it and say that. I don't think it is, but it's definitely in the book, the scenario book, so that's the way we're playing it. Sounds like a nice touch. So now it's going to be morale tests and then combat. Right, we did our morale tests and everybody passed except these chaps in front of us there, which is to say part of Drogel's division, and Diesenhain, unit number 2, because there are 2 of them. Unit number 2, what I'm calling unit number 2, those chaps in the centre there, let's zoom back out. They are French Walloons, or Walloons, and yes, they failed their morale test, so they are indeed disordered. And of course, they can't recover that disorder because this is their turn. You can only recover your disorder during your movement. So that means that they're going to be disordered in the face of the enemy when it's the Anglo Allies' next turn. So they're a primary target there for the well, they've got some Prussians in front of them there, and some, who have they got? They've got some Prussians and some Danish in front of them. Hang on a minute, I do apologise. I think I may have made a mistake earlier. I think I may have referred to these chaps under Scholten as when they fired on them before as Dutch, and they're not. They're Danish, and they're Danish as well. So, okay, now on to combat. And there we have the end of French turn 1, so the official end of the entirety of turn 1. And the French Let's see. What do we got here? Yeah, the French managed to score 3 hits, and the French took 3 hits as well. There were hits taken here on what's the chap's name? Dizenheim, belonging to de Rogel. It was here, and they were wiped out. They were destroyed by musketry and artillery. So we got a hole in the line there. First unit to be removed. These chaps here have taken a blasting. They've only got 1 more strength point left, if I remember correctly. I believe they're Prussians. And let's see, we've got 1 hit here on the Danes. And yep. And I think there was another hit that was taken over here on Clérambault's forces here, coming with the short-range fire coming in from Colonel Blood's artillery. So that means that now in the Anglo-Allied turn, there's an opportunity here because a gap has opened up. So, for example, these chaps here who are across the Nebelbach, they can, they're not poorly trained. They can do a free facing change, and charge these chaps in the flank. As near as I can tell, they're certainly not within their firing arc, which is one of the key things you want to look for in a situation like that. As long as they can do it whilst avoiding the village of Oberglau, because they can't run through Oberglau, obviously, while they're doing that. So we'll see about that. Yes, so now they've got this, French have got this hole here. Now, of course, they've got lots of cavalry back here. The cavalry would love to say hello to infantry who is moving around and not stationary and also not supported, so they're just sort of like freely wandering around. Well, as we can imagine, they're going to come to a sticky end if they do a lot of that. But, well, you know, as usual, we shall see. The other thing, of course, the important thing that's going to happen now in the Anglo-Allied turn is that these units here, these 3 units of artillery, can become stationary, and that's going to make a big difference over here. Things are going to start taking a pounding there very quickly if they become stationary. Well, as they become stationary. So, okay. Things are developing and moving along. Right. Now, look at this fellow. We have a newcomer. Isn't he marvellous? I think he's marvellous. Yes, it's just a bit of set dressing. As we come back here and we can see we might imagine that he is one of these chaps in sort of that lot down there or that lot down there. All right. And if we go back to our normal zoom level, there we go. No, I couldn't resist it. I saw him on eBay, and so I picked him up. It is indeed Del Prado, 54mm scale, and the weight in the thing. It's you know, like a solid piece of miniature. I don't own any others, and I feel I have a sinking feeling that this is going to be a slippery slope. And I might pick up some others, but it is absolutely gorgeous. So I thought I'd just sort of bring him along so we can look at him from time to time. And so there he is, one of Marlborough's cavalry. I suppose he would be a dragoon. I suppose. Well, no, wait a minute. I suppose he looks like line cavalry. So he's just dragoons weren't line cavalry at this time, were they? They were men who actively ran around, acting as mounted infantry, as opposed to in the Napoleonic period where they were pretty much just another type of cavalry. But he's clearly got several small arms there. He's got 2 pistols and he's got a carbine. So anyway, enough of that. Here we are. It's the end of the Anglo-Allied second turns movement. And there's been quite a lot going on. So let's take a look. Let's start off out west and see what we have. Well, as we can see, These chaps here have decided not to charge across the Nebelbach because that would mean that they would be disordered when they come into contact with the enemy, because the enemy are defending the other side of the stream. So instead, they've decided to simply go stationary, and they're going to attempt to destroy this unit by fire, small arms fire. Then we've got other units, the rest of the units in the division, this unit here and this unit here. This is, who is this? This is... was it Anhalt Dessau, I think it is. It's his division. And so they're just sort of sneaking themselves around, trying to get around the side here. Same thing is happening with the cavalry division of, sorry about that, pointing, that was a terrible camera angle. Here we go. The cavalry of de la Tour. Same thing going on with him. They're disordered because they're moving through the forest, but they're moving their way, trying to get west and moving south, as it were. They've got the streams here and everything. So if they're trying to sort of creep themselves around here, it's going to take them some considerable time. And the idea was to have some cavalry lurking around down there to give the enemy something to worry about. These chaps, of course, pre-professional artillery. They haven't gone anywhere, and they can do good work where they are anyway. So, here's to it. And there's Eugene himself keeping an eye on things down that way. Then we have, let's see, these chaps, I think they were who are they? Schalten. They've gone stationary. There's not much point in moving them forward into the marsh right in front of these chaps. Has decided not to do that. These two units of Schaltens, however, have become stationary, and they're going to blast away at these chaps here belonging to Dubourg. Okay. Here we have a mass of... Oh, sorry, not... These cavalry belong to Eugene. They've just stayed where they were. This massive cavalry here, under the control of... Charles Churchill... have sorted themselves out, as it were, and basically what they've tried to do is get the strongest division at the front, and then the next strongest division here, and then the smallest division there, because if we want to throw them forward to beat against the enemy, we don't want to be sending forward a whole bunch of small divisions which will quickly get exhausted. Okay, then the particularly interesting spot is here, where there's the hole, of course. And what's happening here is these chaps here under de Rogel's division. So let's see who. So I'm actually going to have to use that. Bouzancol, something like that. They're being. They've been charged. Yes, that's right. They've been charged by these two units belonging to Horn, and the Prussians there stayed back there and became stationary instead, because if they had come forward, there would have been a very real possibility that they would have been eliminated in the combat. We didn't want that to happen. So instead, these chaps have come forward to get stuck in, and these plucky Dutch here. So what do we got here? We've got Prussians and Swiss there, actually. And then here we've got the Dutch plucky chaps. They've come forward and thrown themselves against the wild geese. That is to say, de Rogel's division, chaps commanded by Claire here. And so it is indeed the Irishman there with, of course, the custom-made flag made by me. There we go. Right. And now they're probably going to, they're plucky chaps. They're getting stuck in. Something's got to happen. But, of course, they've got the artillery here, which is not a good thing because even though it's light artillery, it doesn't matter. When you're dealing with short range, you're basically facing, canister, that sort of thing. So we can expect that they might take a bit of a pounding from that. And, of course, before they even get that far, they're going to have to take a morale test. Well, they'd have to take the test anyway because they're in melee, aren't they? Come to think of it. Right. So, that's what's going on there. Further back here, Orkney's troops, the leftmost of which are occupying Unterglau. And then you have these chaps here. Let me just fix that. There we go. Right. These chaps here belonging to Orkney. they could have gone stationary. I didn't even bother marking them because I don't think it's going to make any difference. And they've basically just stayed back there because they want to move forward together. And if they move forward together right now, some of them at least would be wading through the marsh here and the marshy stream and all that. So no, they're sort of like they're the next line ready to come up. They could have gone further forward a bit, but the idea was to keep them back there so that they're not within the first half of the retreat move from these chaps if they had to retreat, in which case they would disorder them, and we don't want that to happen. So they're back there. Okay. Over here, Inglesby here, they have moved themselves rather smartly across the Nebelbach. Okay. Two of them are not disordered, one of them is. So, of course, they would make a very good target for a French charge if the French wanted to charge them in their turn. But the question is, are the French, of course, it's that classic question in volley and bayonet battles, would the French be prepared to give up their stationary status in order to charge them? And they would be charging, as we can see. Is that there? No, I'm just checking with a map here. Yeah, there's no actual marsh there, no. So they could charge them. These symbols here are for the contour line. So these two units, for example, could charge those chaps of Inglesby there. They wouldn't be charging into the marsh, but they would be giving up their stationary position. So I'm not sure that they'll do that, but we shall see. Nothing much happened back here. And then, let's see. I don't think anything happened there. Again, they didn't want to wade into the marsh and get all tangled up. And, of course, Colonel Blood's artillery have now become stationary, so they're ready to do some serious work down here. And way down on the Anglo-Allied left, or the French right, we have Cutz's division. There's Cutz, by the way, and his division is strung out down here, but it's okay for command because we've got Charles Churchill there helping out. So down there we've got these chaps belonging to Cutz. I think it's Rose. Let's see here. Hang on a second. It is, and they have got. Yes, they've got dedicated guns, but if you cross a marshy stream, you lose your dedicated guns. So, yeah, they're just sort of down there at the end, just in case an opportunity opens up with all this artillery fire coming in here, and they can sort of like pounce down here and maybe make something happen down there. Okay, so yeah, that's the Anglo-Allied movement. So now we're going to do morale, and then we're going to do combat, and we'll see what happens.